So without further ado, let's get going here. Dani, you can pop to the next slide for me.
Okay.
Awesome. So for those of you that I don't know or haven't met yet, I'm Georgina Donahue. I'm the Director of Community at Pragmatic, and it's pretty much the best job ever because I get to spend a lot of time with all of you, as well as brilliant thought leaders and subject matter experts like our guest today. So really the name of the game is just as soon as you are an alumni of Pragmatic, you are in the club, and we've got all sorts of fun stuff for you to do. So conversations like these, which of course are open to everybody. We also have office hours every week. You can come talk to a Pragmatic instructor and get really hands-on feedback from them. And then we also have the pack, which is a kind of a dedicated community space. It's filled with over 10,000 of your product peers who are all alumni of Pragmatic, and you can come ask a question and get some hands-on feedback from someone that's been there. So definitely, if you're not a member there, but you're an alumni, come join us, come hang out. We would love to see you. You can put me to the next slide. And it is my very great honor to kind of kick off this conversation. And you can see from the next slide that Dani is going to talk a little bit more about herself. But, you know, she is a product manager at Deal Engine. She's led teams through product transformations. She launched products that make a huge impact on improving people's lives. She's got experience building product departments from the ground up and you know, teams from scratch. So we're totally delighted to have snagged some of her time today. And it's incredibly relevant because I know that there's been a huge amount of movement of responsibilities and roles in the industry lately. So I'm sure you're all very familiar with the scene of, all right, you just started at a new company. You've been assigned the product manager for an existing product or product line, or maybe you just inherited an existing product inside your current organization, right? Either way, you're probably like, all right, where am I going to go next with it? So really what we're going to talk about today is what to do with a new to you product that's already gone through a big launch. Right. So we're going to talk about the differences between a product and a feature launch, strategies to help you keep that momentum, and really scalability. We were chit-chatting a little bit about, we were marveling at the scalability that Zoom and Slack have undergone in the last year and a half. So how you can really do that too and use that to your advantage. So that's more than enough time of me talking. Dani, I'm delighted to pass it over to you. I'm really excited to have you with us today.
Well, thank you. I'm really excited to be here and talk about what it's like to join a company and kind of take over as the captain of a new product. So we'll go through that. And I think a theme that you'll find is that it's very similar to starting a brand new product. So the good news is that there's not a whole ton of difference in terms of which path you're taking. But before we do that, Georgina talked a little bit about who I am, but you're probably wondering a little bit more about me and how I got to be here. So first, I graduated from Bowling Green State University, which is a university in Ohio, where I currently live. I graduated from there and have been in the tech industry ever since, mostly as a product manager, a little bit as a business analyst. I'm currently the treasurer of the Cleveland chapter of Get With It. Get With It is an organization that works to get more women in technology. We currently have 4 chapters in Ohio and 1 in Pittsburgh. And we are, 3 chapters in Ohio and 1 in Pittsburgh. Sometimes Pittsburgh gets classified as Ohio a little bit. People from Pittsburgh won't like to hear that, but that's okay. So we seek to get more women in technology. We have conferences every year. The Cleveland chapter is having a conference this year at Case Western Reserve University in October. Head over to our website at getwithit.org to find out more information about events near you. We host a lot of virtual events also, so we welcome everyone from all over the world, even if you're in the Netherlands or Sweden, as we have some here. So yeah, I'm really proud to be a part of that organization and flex my activism skills and get more women into the technology space. I'm also consulting right now for a company called Deal Engine. As we mentioned, Deal Engine is a startup that uses data and machine learning really to provide an opportunity for all founders to succeed, especially those who are underrepresented. We offer guidance and ID high potential startups and create an anti-bias predictive model so that we can get more underrepresented founders the funding that they need, because right now it is a teeny tiny little chunk. So the balance is way off there. We actually are looking to onboard a few startups for our next beta cohort. So if you're interested, head over to dealengine.ai. We offer free coaching, tools, and you can help shape our product for the future. This is our second beta round. So head over to dealengine.ai/beta. And if you're interested, apply, and then you'll be contacted by somebody from Deal Engine, and hopefully we can help you out. We've had some successful companies go through our first cohort, so we're pretty excited to get this next one started as well. I am also a mama to this crazy boy right here. He turned 6 years old yesterday, which is unbelievable to me still. But in my free time, we often are playing outside. We live really close to Cedar Point, which is an amusement park in Ohio. So that has been his latest obsession. So if you're in Ohio in the Cedar Point area, hit me up because I'm probably there every day. We can hang. So just him and my husband and I at home. So we love our little tripod. We hang out all the time. In addition to that, I did mention a couple of times that I live in an area that some may consider not to be very great if you're the city of New York. However, the city of Cleveland is much better than a gloomy day in New York, even on a sunny or a gloomy day. I love New York. I hope I don't get a lot of hate for this. I do love New York, but Cleveland is an amazing city. And if you ever have the opportunity, I encourage you to visit. We have a great food scene, great sports, and we're on a great lake, quite literally. So that is a little bit about me and who I am. And we can go ahead and then get started. So today we'll just talk about back to the basics, product discovery, really the foundation of what we're going to build no matter what track you're on, if you're launching a new product or if you are taking the helm of an existing product. There's product discovery is the foundation of where you decide to take the ship. We'll talk about the differences between what a full product launch is and a single feature launch. So whether you're launching that brand new one or you're launching a single feature, a new feature, and kind of taking an existing product further down, we will talk about that. Some strategies to just keep the momentum and ensure lasting success. So whether you are coming in to take over as captain or you're starting a new one, either way, you still want to keep the momentum and keep going and keep people interested in your product. So we'll talk about ways to do that. And we'll identify some ways to streamline that process also. And then hopefully we'll have some time for Q&A afterwards. All right. So back to the basics, product discovery. The base of product discovery is talking to your customers, to your users. You cannot understand what you need to build until you hear from them, because what you're ultimately building is something for those people. And so Pragmatic has this saying called Nihito. They didn't pay me to put this in here. I actually do use it. And it stands for nothing interesting happens in the office. So it means get out of the office, get out of your chair and go meet your customers where they are, meet your users where they are. So if you are building something for retail, head on out into the stores. If you are building something for accountants, go sit with an accountant for a day, especially during tax season, right? making sure you're getting out there into your users' world so that you can understand everything that's happening around them, inside and outside of your product. I think that's something that gets overlooked a lot, is that we put on these blinders of, we are product managers for this product, and so we want to figure out how to make this product better. So let's focus on what our users think and feel about our product. But we also want to take a step back and look at what's happening outside their product. We want to look at, if there's somebody that works at a desk, we want to know what's all over their desk. Do they have a bunch of stuff everywhere that they need help with? An example that I like to use is, at a company I worked for, we were making software for insurance brokers. And we were thinking about, okay, the software, the different process for insurance, what do we do? We went and visited an office, and the insurance broker had paper all over her desk. It was everywhere, and it was chaos, right? And you don't see that if you're just thinking, if you're doing a video call, or if you're thinking about what they're doing when they're using your product. But the opportunity may exist outside of software. So what we found is, okay, there's all this paper everywhere. We need to find a way to digitize things, make it easier to get this information that's in this paper into the software itself. So those were opportunities that we might not have realized had we not actually gone to the office and seen what it was like inside and outside the software. So I just mentioned surveys, interviews, support tickets. If you work at a software as a service company, or a company that has a customer support team, they're going to be great friends of yours, because that's where you're going to get any kind of complaints or issues that arise. You may find that there's something that's small that hasn't necessarily been surfaced up, but so many people are complaining about it, and it's such an easy fix that it's like a no-brainer to do, right? So that's why you want to make sure you're constantly communicating with your customer success, your customer support departments, call centers, any of those types of things. You want to make sure that you're getting information from them so that you can get some information on where you need to focus your attention and prioritize some of the features you might be working on. Internal feedback, that kind of piggybacks off of that. So internal feedback can come from sales departments. So sales departments can just be a conduit for feedback from prospects that they're talking to. So they may be talking to certain prospects, and they've gotten several inquiries or questions about, when are we going to implement X feature, or why doesn't our product do this? And that's invaluable information right there. So making sure that you're constantly talking to internal teams, customer success teams, anywhere really, anywhere in the company, you're going to get good feedback. So that's where you want to be pulling your internal feedback from. You may have a working group already started, and that's a great place to get internal feedback as well. A working group usually consists of a representative from each area of the business, each department, and you can meet regularly. And I'll talk a little bit more about a working group later on in the presentation. But that's where you'll get a lot of great internal feedback also, because you're kind of bringing the minds together to represent the business as a whole. Competitive analysis, I have it on here, but I also caution competitive analysis because we want to make sure that we're not just doing feature parity, right? It's not a race to the bottom in terms of, feature for feature. We want to do competitive analyses, but we want to do it with a grain of salt, in that, okay, here's what our competitors are doing, but how are the customers reacting to it? How are the users reacting to it? So if the competitor is doing something over here and you're losing users to it, you're losing customers to that competitor, then that's something you want to take a look at. If the competitor has just got A to Z list of a bunch of features and you have only A to D, for example, that doesn't mean that you need the rest of those features in order to be competitive. Remember to take a look at how the market is reacting to that competitor when you do that analysis. Same thing goes for media, industry trends, webinars, newsletters. if you're whatever industry you're in, I highly recommend finding credible like newsletters or magazines to subscribe to, so that you can kind of keep an eye on what's going on in the industry, what leaders are talking about, what thought leaders are talking about. Maybe there's something you can get ahead of. Maybe there's something that you haven't quite heard from your customers yet, but you know it's something that might be up and coming. There could be compliance or legal things coming up if you work in that type of industry. So for example, I used to work at Macy's, and I worked in the point of sale system. And so there were a lot of, as you can imagine, taking people's credit cards and money. There's a lot of regulatory and compliance that we have to make sure we check all of those boxes. And so keeping an ear to that side of the house, make sure that we stay on par with those, and that something doesn't come in at the last second and derail our roadmap. And so those are the kinds of things that you want to keep an eye on in the media. Going a little bit deeper, when you do talk to your users, I always say put your therapist hat on. And so when you ask a user to describe their day, always, ask them, okay, well, tell me more. How does it make you feel? And that's where the empathy comes in. So I've done a talk on this before, like just strictly on empathy. So I can go on for days on this topic, but having empathy as a product manager is one of the greatest skills that you can have. You want to make sure that you are getting inside of your users' heads, that you're able to understand how they're feeling when they're using your product, how they're feeling, like I mentioned before, when they're not using your product. So there's a great survey that Superhuman has done for a product market fit. One of the questions they ask is, how would you feel if you could no longer use our product? And that's where you kind of get an idea of somebody would be very disappointed if they would no longer be able to use our product, or they wouldn't. And if they would be very disappointed, that indicates more of a product market fit. If they would not be disappointed if they can no longer use your product, something is amiss and you need to take a look at that, right? That's where we're indicating a little bit of not exactly meeting your user's needs. And so when I talk about empathy, what I really mean is getting inside your user's head and understanding what their thought process is and how they're feeling as they're using your product. And if they're going through your product and they are frustrated, or it's taking forever, or they dread using your product, for example, let me think of a good example that would not cause controversy, actually. If you want to do your taxes, right? Doing taxes is not everybody's cup of tea. But me personally, when I use TurboTax, I don't mind doing it because TurboTax is easy, it's conversational, and this is not an ad. I don't work for TurboTax. TurboTax did not pay me. But it's something that takes an arduous task of doing your taxes and makes it easy. And that's where TurboTax has really succeeded and found that product market fit, is because they understand what it's like to be a person doing your taxes, at least in America. I know we have some international folks here, but at least in America, they understand what it's like to go through filing your taxes. And so being able to take something like that and understanding that thought process and getting into the person's head, and then knowing the conversational tone that they take through the product, that's really where they succeeded in creating something that doesn't spark joy necessarily. I won't call it that, because nobody likes doing their taxes. If you do like doing your taxes, please DM me so you can do my taxes, because I hate it. So again, just understanding how people feel, taking something that is awful and creating something kind of not awful about it. Maybe you have something that's a really fun product. Maybe you're product manager for Candy Crush, which is awesome. Then you're creating something that people do for fun, and you're understanding how to engage users and engage your customers throughout. And again, just understanding how people feel when they're using your product and when they're not. So this last point, paying attention to parts of their job outside of the technology. So I mentioned before the desk with all the papers and the frustration there. So that's where there's something that may indicate a solution that you can put inside of your product to help make that person's job easier. Having empathy is going to reduce the risk of pivot also, because you're understanding what the problems are and where the opportunities are before you build any kind of solution. So you're not taking a solution and then trying to backfill it with a problem. It's a little bit more difficult to do that. So finding the solution first will allow you to prioritize and go in a direction that will reduce pivot and allow you to move more quickly in creating value for your users. Okay. So talking about the differences between a product launch and a feature launch. So now that we understand product discovery, looking back on that product discovery, a lot of it's the same whether you're building a new product or adding on to an existing one. So you'll notice this list is pretty short. It's not a big list of here's where the huge differences are, because there's not a ton. When you talk about product launch, this is a new product. It's not being used. You're establishing a brand in the market. You're establishing maybe even a company. It could be a new product within a company. It could be a brand new company. You're building revenue. You're adding a new revenue channel, or you're building revenue from the ground up. A feature launch, you're taking a piece of an already existing product with existing users and you're putting it out into the world. So you're boosting engagement, or you're re-engaging people. You're increasing your revenue with an existing product line. So again, not huge differences here in the list, because the activities that we'll talk about in the coming slides here are going to be very similar no matter what. The biggest difference is with a product launch versus a feature launch. A product launch is probably going to have more like marketing, more collateral, depending on the type of product, the type of company, than a feature launch would. It's a little bit of a bigger deal. But essentially the activities you'll go through, the process is all going to be generally the same. So a good example that I like to use is Instagram. So the product launch is Instagram. Instagram is the product, but Instagram Stories is a new feature. So Instagram, the product, no users, nothing. It launched, I forget what year. And it was cool. We all got on it, right? And now there's Instagram Stories. So Instagram Stories was a response to Snapchat. So everyone had Snapchat first, and Snapchat did exactly what Stories is, where it was a certain amount of time, a certain amount of seconds, and then it disappeared, right? So Instagram's response to that competitor was to create Instagram Stories. Now, it's not a feature war. It may be, stories have become one of those feature war things now. I always joke that like the Apple Health app is going to have stories next or something like that. Everything has stories now, Fleets Stories, whatever the LinkedIn one is called. But Instagram was the first one to respond to Snapchat in stories. And so that's really what the difference was there, was they were taking their users that they were losing and they were re-engaging them with Instagram. So 4 steps to a perfect launch. I wrote an article about this, and I did not link it here, but we can I'm sure get that, Georgina. So I wrote an article about this that will go through these steps in a lot more detail, but I'd like to cover some of them here. There's really 4 steps that I see to a perfect launch. And this is true, again, whether you're launching a brand new product or whether you're launching a feature. The article is a product launch. It doesn't say whether it's a feature or a product. So it's generally the same. So the 4 steps that I see are: get your messaging on point. So that's number 1. You want to make sure that you're getting the message across on what your product is, what the value proposition is, and that's what's going to guide the rest of the process. You want to define your goals and your KPIs up front. You want to know what success means, and you want to use that you want to drive towards that and make it more of an outcome-based plan. You want to document the plan and assign tasks, and this is where you'll hold specific people accountable for things. And that's what's really going to help, because it doesn't just become this thing out in the ether. You're actually creating an actionable plan. And then communicate and collaborate is true in everything, but communicate, collaborate. That's where you're going to find success, because you're bringing expertise in from different areas of the organization. Everybody has different expertise, everybody has different skills, and you're bringing all of those together to create a plan and a launch plan that will help you to succeed. So the first one, get your messaging on point. So there's really 4 questions here that are really important that you need to answer before you even start. And that's, what is your product or feature? What does it do? Who cares about it? And why do they care about it? And so this meme here, you have 8 seconds to get my attention. Really it's true. It's probably less than 8 seconds. People want to know why they should care about whatever it is you have. And so whether you're using a formal positioning document, I know Pragmatic has a few resources that are available for this, or not, this is where you want to really get it down on paper if you don't yet. So your value prop, get it down on paper. This is a great thought exercise too, even before you start building something. If you wanted to do this, is what is your product? What does it do? Who cares about it? And why do they care about it? And if you can't answer these questions easily, then you need to go back to that product discovery step and take a look at what you're missing there. Where do you need to go to get more information? Is what you're going to build actually the right thing to build? Why do people care about it? If nobody cares about it, then you probably shouldn't be building it. So that's really where you're going to take this and you're going to put it in a document, and that's going to be your guiding light as you go through the rest of this plan. It's going to be used for marketing collateral. It's going to be used when you're talking about your product. It's going to be used for sales or customer success. And it'll be used as you communicate to the rest of the organization too. Defining your goals and your KPIs. So setting these targets up front is what's going to help you to keep this launch plan outcome driven. And so this is really defining success. What does success mean to us? There's quantitative success and there's qualitative success too, right? Quantitative is paramount. That's what's gonna that's what you're going to be able to use to really measure, did we make a difference? What's the revenue? What's the return on investment for us? What's our engagement like? KPIs are different across the industry. It depends on your product, it depends on your company, your users. There are so many different variables, but setting those targets and being specific about it is what's going to help. And that's what's going to help drive you and keep you outcome focused. So creating a formal working group, this is what I mentioned before. So typically the working groups that I've had in a model like a software as a service company is you have your product manager, somebody from sales, customer success, customer support, development, operations, marketing, any other departments that may be applicable to your company. What your goal is with the working group is bringing together a group of people that represent the entire company. So not saying that they're going to have a final say or represent what the company decides. It's really just a representative from each area of the company to come together and collaborate. And so what you'll collaborate on is a specific plan. You'll collaborate on what you think the KPIs should be, what those specific targets should be. You might collaborate on what the messaging is, and just work together to get things done. And so this third step, document, plan, and assign tasks. So this is where you're assigning action items and deliverables to specific people for the product launch plan. And this is where you're going to hold people accountable and responsible to get through the plan and get things done. So for this one, I say task story mapping. So a lot of you are probably familiar with story mapping, and that's where we literally take Post-its and just slap them all on the wall, right? You can probably see my wall here. It's got a bunch of Post-its. I'm the Post-it queen here. What I like to do is the same kind of activity and thought exercise with a launch plan. And so you can do this whether you're in a room or distributed. I use Miro personally, but I know there's a few other tools out there that people can use to facilitate this kind of activity. And what you'll do is you'll get together in your working group and you'll start to write out tasks that you think need to be done. So for example, if I'm marketing, what I'm going to write is, okay, we're going to need a press release. We're going to need a blog. We're going to need social media posts. We're going to need a flyer to hand out at trade shows, depending on what the company is. And the same thing will be true for customer success, sales. Sales might write things like, I need a sandbox environment because I need to be able to show this when I'm doing a demo to customers. Or customer supports might say, I need like an FAQ document to be out there on the help page because that'll reduce the number of calls that come into the call center or the number of emails or chats that we get. And so what you'll do is you'll take that and you'll put it all on your literal or virtual whiteboard, and you will then group those tasks together depending on which category they belong to. So marketing, sales, operations, development has some stuff in this too, right? Because they got to actually build the thing, and they got to make sure that the system is ready, ensure system readiness, pilot readiness. If you have customer success, you may need help identifying pilot customers depending on the size of the feature. Or if you're doing any kind of A/B testing, you have some user experience folks involved. Whatever it is, you're going to do the same activity you do for story mapping, and you're going to put all of that up, and then you're going to group things together, and then from there, you'll actually assign owners. And so you have your 6 Post-its for sales, and you say, okay, who's getting each of these tasks? And then you're going to assign a target delivery date. People get nervous about dates, myself included. I never like to assign hard dates for things because what tends to end up happening is things get rushed at the end, or we move too fast to try to meet a date and then the quality lacks. So set dates because you want to keep people focused, but be a little bit flexible too, knowing, offer yourself some grace and some buffer.
I'm having trouble hearing you.
Siri apparently thought that I was talking to it. I'm going to just take my watch off. Sorry about that. So offer yourself some grace and some buffer room. Add some buffer in there so that you have a little bit of wiggle in case something does get delayed. And so from there, you'll actually then take it to the next step, which is communicate and collaborate. So this is where you'll take that working group, you'll meet regularly, and you'll work on your tasks together. And so maybe I, as a product manager, trying to define some KPIs, but I'd like to meet with sales to understand what their forecasts are for the next quarter so that I can have a better idea of the targets that I want to set or that are more realistic. And so working together, collaborating, and don't be afraid to switch it up. So if I get assigned a task and I'm having trouble with it, or I end up with too much on my plate, somebody else can take it over. Or if we had, okay, we're going to do a press release on this feature, and then we decide, maybe it doesn't necessarily warrant a press release. Maybe it's not that huge, right? Cross it off the list, or vice versa. So if you're doing something and you say, wow, this is actually really cool, we should probably do a press release because I think it's going to get more attention if it gets out there into the hands of the media. Great, let's write a press release. And it can happen after launch too. If you launch a product and you say, oh, we're getting a lot of really great feedback on this. It's becoming really popular. Let's do a press release, or let's do a blog post on this, or let's circle back and email some customers that already exist, or email some former prospects and see if we can re-engage them. And so that's really what you're doing, is just communicating constantly, collaborating, being scrappy, being iterative, and not being afraid to pivot and change things around. And then also communicating the plan. So you have this working group and you're all chugging right along and you're going through your plan, but there's others outside of the working group that aren't necessarily sure what the plan is. And so this is the step where you want to also communicate to the rest of the organization what the plan is. And so this can happen depending on what type of company you work for. It could be a town hall, it can be an all hands meeting, it can be a formal presentation, it could be something you have to present to the executive board first. It differs depending where you are. And so that's where you'll communicate, hey, this is what we're doing, this is what we're up to, here's what the plan is, we're really excited. And you may even want to get other members of the company in on it. So maybe it's something that you created a blog post, or you're having a launch party or some kind of event for, and you want everybody to hype it up and share it on their social. So you want to, this is where you want to take that step to involve other people if you want to. So you've done that. You've got all of your launch plans done. You have put it all out there. You've released it and launched it out into the market. And so what do? Right? You've put it out there into the world, and now what? Now, what you want to do is you want to monitor KPIs as they come in. So this is if you're doing something where it's going to be used right away. And frequently, then you can monitor those KPIs as they come in, especially if it's something like an engagement or a sign up or something like that. I launched a product a couple of years ago where it was kind of transactional based. And so once we launched the product, we were able to kind of sit there and almost watch it like watching a TV, right? Like watching transactions come in. And it was pretty exciting to see. But if you're not able to do that, communicating with your team members, with the organization, making sure you have an ear over to sales if it's applicable, an ear to customer support, being available when people need you, monitoring the media or anything like that, depending on what your product is, just really kind of having an ear out to the world to hear any rumblings of the product. And it's communicate, not communicate-y, because I can't type. And then the last thing you want to do, which a lot of people forget about, is celebrate. Whether you're launching a brand new product, a feature, whatever it is, you want to stop and take time to celebrate. Yes, we want to keep moving. Yes, we want to move on to the next thing. We want to be the first to do everything. We want to move quickly and create value, but we also want to celebrate and know that let our teams know that they're valued. And so what I like to do is, either take it's a little bit difficult to do this today, but take the team out for drinks or bring in donuts or something like that. A little bit harder to do that nowadays, but you get the idea. Maybe if you're a distributed team, sending everybody a DoorDash gift card or something, depending on what's in the budget, or giving everybody a shout out, just making sure people know that they're appreciated. Another thing I like to do, a couple weeks or so after, depending on what the right cadence is for the feature or product, is is bring the KPIs back to the team. And I like to do that just in a stand-up. So if I'm in stand-up, I'll bring some news back and say, hey, that feature we released 3 weeks ago has 73% engagement, or the NPS is 82%. People really love this thing that you guys built. We're seeing a lot of traction with it. We're getting a lot of great feedback. I always like to continuously bring that to my development teams, because the more user, customer, market contacts that a team has, the easier it is to make decisions and the more connected that they feel to a product. And so I always like to kind of bring it full circle and come back around and say, hey, this thing that we built and that you guys helped create is really loved in the market. So yeah, don't be afraid to take time to celebrate. It should always be done. So that was a ton of information. Let's just do a quick recap. And this is really the basic points. So discover with empathy, listen to your users, understand how they feel, get in their heads, inside and outside of your product. Follow the plan. So create the plan and follow it. So creating that actionable plan. I'm a to-do list person. If it's not on my to-do list, it's not getting done. And I find great joy in literally taking a pen and crossing things off of a list. Yes, Georgina, yes. I'm a huge fan of that. I get great satisfaction and feel so accomplished when I can just cross a line through something. So having that plan will help keep the focus of the team, will help drive you to a successful launch, will help hold people accountable with actionable things and delivery dates. And communicate often, communicate. Always be transparent, make sure that you're available when people need you, communicate any changes that occur, and make sure everyone's always up to speed, and celebrate. When you put something out there, when you build it and you put something out there into the world, it is something to be celebrated, no matter how small you may think that it is, because you are making a difference in your product, in your users' journeys, and in your company, and in your career. So it's always something to celebrate. So don't be afraid to do that. That's it. So I love meeting people. I love mentoring people. I love connecting with people. So here's some of my contact information. You will find me a little bit more active on Twitter than LinkedIn. So if you scan that QR code there, it should take you to my Twitter page. Follow me, DM me, whatever. That's 2 underscores, Dani__K, because there is an imposter Dani _K out there somewhere. If you're on this call, I want my handle, DM me. But if you scan the QR code, that should take you right to my page also. Or if you're Jon Snow, you can send a raven or yourself.
I love it. I love it. We've got some questions for you. So we are going to pepper some questions your way. For folks, now is the time to pop your questions in there. And as we are going through some of these questions, we are going to tee up a quick poll for you just about the setup of the webinar itself. So if you could complete our poll for you, for us and for you, because we use it to make our webinars better, that would be great. And in the meantime, I am going to put Dani in the hot seat.
Oh boy.
A quick question that might have a long answer. Where would you rank surveys in your customer engagement process? Like how important are those to you?
So it really depends on the product and the company, the size of your user base particularly. If it's something where you have a pretty sizable user base and you want to get some quick quantitative feedback, surveys are great. I love surveys. There's a lot of tools that you can use also that are You can do surveys in app. So one of them is Pendo that I've used before, where you can put the survey in app, and as people are using it, they can answer your survey. And I think that's a great way to do surveys, because you're getting people as they're inside of your product, and that's where their heads and their feelings are, rather than outside over here where they may have 1,000 other things going on and they're just answering. So you're more likely to get honest feedback inside of a product if you're using a tool like that. I do think, again, depending on what it is, surveys are a great tool. I don't know necessarily where I would rank them. I think that getting user feedback, like talking to users, is the most important. But surveys are a great way to be able to quantify feedback, because you're asking the same question of several different people. And if it's a multiple choice survey rather than just like an open text field, that's where you're going to be able to quantify things a little bit easier. So I do like surveys for that. So I do think surveys are up there. I do.
Awesome. This one is like kind of related, but might be different, because you might use surveys to find this out. But what do you think the best way is to figure out how your market reacts to a competitor's features?
That's
Right?
a really
We're not racing to the bottom. We're not going to compete on features, but you got to know, right? Like if you're Instagram, you need to know how Snapchat, how people are responding to Snapchat.
Exactly. Yes. That's where talking to people is going to be the most effective. And one of the things that I actually learned at didn't learn it, but was really driven home at Pragmatic marketing training was, yes, you have your customer base and you can talk to them, but you should also be talking to people who are not your customers. So I think it's like a 80-20 or something like that. I forget the actual percentage. But you should be talking to prospects also. You should be talking to your competitors' customers. You should be talking to customers or users who don't use you or your competitor, potentials. And that's where you'll be able to find that information. You can also glean some stuff from media, social media, industry trends, that kind of stuff. But talking to people is where you're going to be able to get the most feedback about competitors. And you want to make sure you ask specific questions. You don't necessarily have to name your competitors. But in the example of Instagram and Snapchat, asking questions about the ability to post something and have it disappear within X seconds or whatever. That's just off the top of my head, but you get the point.
Yep, absolutely makes sense. All right, so the next question I have for you is one that I'm sure we've all experienced in this space, and looking for your kind of advice about how to navigate it and what's worked for you. How do you filter out internal functional perspectives? So, without a doubt, you've got all your internal partners and colleagues, sales, marketing, support, engineering, et cetera, everybody. They've got really valuable insights, but each are coming from their own perspective. So how do you make sure that you're really following the market and not just kind of being pushed in the tide of kind of internal stuff? And of course, this is the heart of Nihito, right? Like nothing important happens in the office. You got to get out of it. But what are your tactics for kind of filtering out the value from the extra stuff that might come to you from internal folks?
Yes. And this is something that I know a lot of people struggle with also, because if the CEO comes by and says, hey, I need you to put this feature in and move it to the top of your priority list, it's a little difficult to be like, well, no. So you have to really know how to balance that type of direction with your market's feedback. And so that's where it's about, what I've done in the past is it's really about education. So saying, okay, that's a really great idea. Where did you get that idea? Or let's ask the market about it. So if it's something, if the CEO says, Hey, Instagram, I think you should do stories. We need to do stories. Everybody's doing stories. Let's do stories. Or I guess not Instagram, because Instagram was the first one to do it. If you're LinkedIn says, hey, we need to do stories. So you say, okay, well, instead of just doing it, let's do a little bit more research. So it's taking that feedback. It's again taking it with a grain of salt. So you're taking the feedback and you're documenting it, and then you're going out and you're building on it. So digging deeper into that specific request or that feature idea, whatever it is, just doing more and more research and providing more evidence that it is something that would be profitable, valuable, a good return on investment for the company, and being able to prove it. If you can't prove it, it's a little bit harder of a sell.
Yep, totally makes sense. All right, I think we have time for one more question. So this is the last one. If you are taking over a product that is troubled, that it kind of has a history to it, what advice do you have for getting others to see the changes in direction are really needed, right? So how do you get internal stakeholders to change their direction?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I've been part of a couple products like this in the past where it's not necessarily seen as a priority, right? It's sort of the problem child. And so what I've done and what I've found to be successful is getting out there, talking to users, and getting evidence. The more concrete evidence that you can provide that says, this is why we need to take this direction, and this is why we need to prioritize it, the easier it is to sell. So if you have something where there's a feature that you want to build, but maybe leadership doesn't see it as something that's going to be valuable, or they have other priorities going on, they don't want to dedicate the time or resources or budget to it, this is where you can be out. You can talk to users, you can understand their need for it, get as much quantitative data as you can, because if you're talking to somebody like leadership, executive leadership, this is where you need to know your audience. So things like numbers resonate with them, right? Dollar signs. And so you need to understand, or you need to be able to communicate how valuable from a dollar amount standpoint something would be to a company, to your company. And that's where you can try to turn that direction around, is get testimonials, quantify feedback, engagement. If you can do experiments in the market, like without doing code or having to get resources, awesome, go ahead and do it. It's a little bit more difficult to do that, especially for a product that's more established and probably has an older code base if it's been neglected for a while. I've been a part of some of those, and it is a little bit more difficult. But again, the more evidence that you can provide that something would be valuable, the better.
Awesome. Really, really great advice. And lots of appreciation in the chat for you for all the really practical, usable insights. So thank you very much for sharing that. For folks who want to continue this conversation, if you're an alum, come join us in the community. We are going to continue to chat about these. I see a bunch of questions here that I know we didn't get a time to answer. I promise you that we can answer them in the pack though. So if you want to come join us and hang out with a bunch of other Pragmatic alum, I put the link to that in the chat for you. And of course, if you haven't scanned that QR code already, do it quick. Dani's an awesome person to hang out with. Of course, she's an alum, so you can hang out with her in our community, or you can hang out with her on Twitter, which is her preferred place to shoot the breeze. So thank you so much for your time. Really, really
Thank you for having me.
All right, guys, I will chat with you next time. We are going to be back here in about 2 weeks talking to Mike Mace. So join us and I will see you then.